If you're watching this tape, then you can assume that I've either left, gotten banned, or the worst case, the server shut down. I'm recording this video to deliver you the story of my life in Soar, and how I went from an idiot with 3 dirt blocks to my name, to an idiot with the ability to crash the server with a flick of the finger. The idea for this video has been in the drafts for at least 3 years, but for reasons you'll see later on, I had to wait for the right time to make it, and that time is now. So, I introduce to you the story of the biggest illegal empire on Soar. We'll start in the year of 2020. I was looking for some Skyblock servers out of boredom when I saw a YouTube ad for Soar. It had a decent premise. Each player gets their own personal island to build whatever they like. An endless regular world that resets weekly, where you can harvest resources. I didn't do a whole lot that year. I was getting used to the server's mechanics, learning about the server plugins, and teaching myself new things about building and how to make use of my limited island space. However, 2021 is where the madness quickly picked up. In 2021 I started talking with the community some more, and one of those members of the community was a man named Fox. I've arranged an interview with him today to discuss how it all started.
We met just after the garden-themed build competition had been held in the server. I won first place, and I was thinking about what to get as my reward, but in the meantime, we ended up finding a huge breakthrough with spawners.
Unlike most servers, this one has its own rules and mechanics to prevent mob farms, so that the island world isn't filled with the same lag-inducing farms, and mob drops preserved their value. One such mechanic was that any mobs summoned from a spawner would not drop any loot. This didn't mean that farming mobs was impossible though. Thanks to some smart thinking, we found a way to make it work. Introducing the My Pet plugin. It allows you to tame almost every mob to have it follow you around and help you out like a wolf does. This plugin was the catalyst for allowing us to farm spawner mobs. But how? Well, whenever you tame a pet via the plugin, you're given the option to release it into the wild. Doing this will create a copy of the original mob, and, well, release it. But this also wipes the history of the mob coming from a spawner, tricking the server into thinking it's a natural mob. This allowed the mob to drop items. Now, we have a way to farm mob drops, but it's still a little underwhelming that you can only farm natural spawners like skeletons, zombies and spiders, right? Well, allow me to introduce another plugin, the Golden Enchants plugin. Well, that's what its name used to be. It added tons of unique enchants to spice up the game, one of them being Thrifty, an enchantment that granted a tiny 1% chance to drop the mob's corresponding spawn egg. Some of you might have caught on already, but let's go further. With the power of the Thrifty enchant, we can make use of nearly every mob in the game to harvest their drops infinitely. But we had one specific mob in sight to catch first, and that mob would grant us immortality. And it did, at insane levels. In order to get an Evoker spawn egg, we needed to kill enough of them to get lucky. 1% lucky. It took about 3 full days of on and off grinding and trading for a woodland mansion map. In the meantime, Fox worked on creating a capture chamber, which was safe enough to use. After spending hours of killing Evokers, I got the spawn egg. Not even 10 minutes later, and we'd reached immortality. Shulkers full of totems at the power of our fingertips. But it didn't end there. We were finding even more broken ways to make the most of this exploit. Whilst it's true that killing mobs from spawners yielded no drops, this wasn't the case if the mobs were naturally killed. You can kind of guess where that led to. Spawner rooms tunneling into a soul campfire chamber with hopper collection. Removing the need to capture the evokers streamlined the killing process and made the farm even more insane. Emeralds were automatically filtered out due to them only dropping if a player was credited to the kill. With all these totems, we were able to download an automatic totem swapper mod, grab a shulker of totems and take them to a PvP area, making us completely unkillable. And yeah, this is already quite insane. Infinite mob drops and totems, it doesn't get much better than that. I lied. It actually does get better than that. Why do you think this video is over 20 minutes long, are you stupid? It gets so much better than that. And this next bit is related to what Fox received as a reward for that build competition.
I thought about it for a while, considering things like infinite potion effects, a super fast pickaxe, but in the end, I went for infinite quartz, my favorite block in Minecraft. Also, I chose to place my reward on one of my islands, Vulpinia.
The owner of the server, Steve, was the one to grant Fox's wish of infinite quartz, but with some conditions to make sure he didn't abuse it. Number 1, the quartz must only be used for his own projects, and number 2, he cannot trade any of the quartz for profit. Fox proposed the idea of unlimited quartz in a unique way, a command block to summon a spawner. Whenever the block below was free of entities, a skeleton holding quartz would immediately appear there. And for the record, spawners on people's personal islands were highly illegal. It was with this rare exception that the opportunity was allowed.
But wait, you just said earlier that mobs from spawners don't drop items when killed by a player, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. I did say that, didn't I? Well, it doesn't seem to work through natural killing, so I guess you just use a /give command instead. Spawner was worth a try though.
Yeah, I guess I'll tell Steve to edit the command block and say goodbye to our spawner. Well, Steve visited my island and messed with the command block. You think the spawner will be there when we log on?
Nah, definitely not. There's no way he'd give you a spawner and just leave it. He completely forgot to remove the spawner. Listen, Steve, if you're watching this, we treated this with great responsibility and did not waste the gift you gave us. We made sure to be careful of this power. To cover and protect the evidence, Fox decided to wrap the spawner in bedrock, which is an item available for donating, though its main purpose is to redeem it to use it for decorative heads. The reason this spawner is better than using a regular spawner is because of its insane speed. The command Fox used to spawn it in gave it nearly zero delay, making it spawn mobs as fast as we can clear its space. And this is where a really obscure Soar mechanic takes place. Because players can't take damage in the island world, they, along with mobs, are teleported to an open space above them if they start suffocating inside a block. We were able to implement this into the spawner setup by using a piston to suffocate a mob when it spawns, instantly teleporting it up to a water stream which will take it to the killing chamber below. But just one second, this setup is cool and all, but it's not very useful with this bedrock blocking us from swapping the spawn egg. So how did we do it?
We tried many different ways to glitch our head into the spawner, but every time we tried it, the island's flotation mechanic teleported us up before we got a chance to swap the egg. We tried ladders, trapdoors, we tried riding our pets, but the movement was too scuffed. After hours of trial and error, we discovered a very simple solution: hopes.
With the spawner set to evokers, this was the peak of our setup, allowing for 3 mobs to spawn every second. So in just 1 minute of this machine being active, we could fill over 6 shulkers full of totems. And not just that, but as long as we had other spawn eggs, we could get annoying resources such as prismarine from guardians. We started hoarding all the mob drops we could think of and filling chests upon chests of totems. However, come just a few weeks later, there was no need. This spawner was made nearly entirely useless because I discovered a method of duplication. Now this is where I should mention something that makes me look like a slightly less than horrible human being. The group and I that took part in all of this, known as the Big Brain Lair, declared rules on ourselves. Number 1. Anything we dupe stays between us and not spread around the server. We really didn't want any economies to crash by giving everyone 50 stacks of diamonds. Number 2. For similar reasons as number 1, we were not to sell anything we duped. And number 3, the most important one, we can dupe whatever we like aside from anything that is exclusive to the server's donation page. Things like bedrock, light blocks, structure voids, and spawnable witch traders could only be obtained through buying it. We didn't want to affect the income of the server, so whenever we needed those items ourselves, we'd just buy them to obtain them legitimately. Those were the main rules we gave ourselves. Professionals have standards. With that out of the way, let me get into how this dupe works. It required a mod and a plugin to work. The required plugin allowed you to open a shulker box from your hand or from your inventory by right-clicking it. Simple enough. The client-side mod, like Matica, allows you to create a clone of a build and make a ghost of it so you can accurately rebuild it. Lightmatica has a feature called Easy Place Mode. This makes building super easy, auto-swapping blocks from your inventory and placing blocks at super speed. If you had a schematic in front of you, held one of the blocks you needed for it, and right-clicked a shulker box to open it whilst looking at the block with Easy Place on, it would place the shulker whilst also opening it, creating a ghost shulker in your menu. You could still extract the items, not affecting the shulker you just placed. The items would then be duplicated. We set ourselves up with large sets of enchanted gear, huge amounts of coloured set concrete, and some of the grindiest blocks like mushroom stems and dispensers. The main thing we was excited for, however, was some of the special enchants. Since Fox had been playing on the server longer than me, he had a stash of various different enchants that were no longer obtainable. The most important one being Divine Touch. This enchant allowed the user to harvest and pick up spawners, letting you use them anywhere you want. The thing is, this enchant was not supposed to exist on the server. This info might not be fully accurate, but from what I've heard, Divine Touch was only accidentally available for 1 day, and Steve, the server owner, had put out a bounty for this enchant, offering extremely enticing offers in return for any tools or books with this enchant. Few people actually kept their book, and one unknown user was kind enough to share the pickaxe with us to borrow. We gladly returned it once we all had our own copy. With all our pickaxes equipped with Divine Touch, we now had access to spawners of nearly every mob type. But suddenly, we had to stop our plans. We caught wind of some other people potentially duplicating items. Usually you'd think it'd be fine to keep the dupe under wraps and keep duping until you have all you need, but we couldn't do that. We were adamant on keeping our word on not duplicating donation exclusive items, but we had high doubts that anyone else would. So, to prevent them from potentially doing so, we notified Steve of the exploit, and the next day the Shulker plugin was removed, making the dupe impossible to recreate. 7 months later, and I had settled on top of my stash of duplicated items. To separate what items were legit or not, I put everything that was duped on a faraway island in the middle of nowhere, disguised by a giant ball of terracotta sampled from a Badlands biome. It was designed in a way that even if people used a free cam mod to peek into the island, you couldn't really tell that there was a stash of duplicated items. Barrels were used as storage behind blocks to be invisible during free cam, unlike chests. Some major updates dropped during this time. The world was revamped with insane cave generation thanks to the Caves and Cliffs update. Deep Slate was added with their ore variants, copper was introduced, and a friendly new warden was added to the game. It was a time like this when we desperately wanted another dupe to come to light. And one did, and it was much faster than the last. Unlike the last duplication exploit, this one just required one plugin. After the last one was removed, Steve was trying other similar shulker plugins because they were so loved by the community for being so convenient. But the next one that was added conveniently helped execute this dupe. The way this one works is simple. Hold the shulker in your hand and right click. I found the dupe one day by chilling around with some other members of the server. when I tried to open my shulker, I noticed that I also placed it on the ground. It immediately reminded me of the last dupe, and I knew what just happened. I quickly left the group behind to investigate further. What I learned was that when you right-clicked with a shulker in your hand, there was a small half-second delay before it actually opened. If you placed the shulker down in this time, you could open it and place it at the same time, making it much faster and more convenient than the last dupe, and this is the sort of speed it got to. We got everything we wanted that we missed from last time. Spawn eggs of every important mob like evokers and wardens, all copper block variants, spawners of various different mob types, unbreakable tools and elytra, and more. However, there's a special set of items that I've been holding on to for months. A set of items that would be extremely helpful if we had it in high amounts. Introducing the Soar Christmas. Christmas on Soar is a very special time. People gather around to build festive islands, send each other gifts and embrace the Christmas spirit. One nice thing about this time of year on Soar is that a group of people organise a special event to allow people to sign a book with a request of things they want, from diamonds all the way to islands worth real money. On delivery date, players will find a shulker box in their mail with the requested items, other resources, currencies, and also a unique custom item. These custom items were various different items with a unique name and lore text that made it special to each person, sometimes with actual functions such as changing the movement speed of the player when held. These items were only possible through the server owner Steve by running a command to offer us these items to share. Luckily for me, I designed every custom item that went out to people, so I knew exactly which item had a useful function. Each player is restricted to one custom item per year, which meant that I could only get one item, right? Well, every time the deliveries would be sent out, islands that couldn't be delivered to for various reasons would have their box returned, for everyone to take if they liked. I would take each important one, duplicate it, and return it to the box for someone else to take instead. The following useful items are as follows: the pork pouch, NASA grade fireworks, Morbius meal, Cupid's arrow, lucky pickaxe, and unstable liquid. These items weren't game breaking of course, but they were fun to use. For example, Cupid's arrow would guarantee a player to die regardless of the armor they were wearing. These items were really fun to use, but we couldn't ignore the elephant in the room. The dupe was extremely easy to replicate, so we had to make sure that we had all we wanted and quickly notify Steve about the plugin before anyone else could discover it and potentially harm the server. Small fun fact too, we did in fact find some evidence of people duplicating some donation exclusive items. On a certain island, a witch trading store would be selling them for extremely low prices, like a block of gold cheap, and restocked very often. Of course it's not hard evidence, but it proves that our concern for others duping those items weren't for nothing, and we had to be more careful in the future. Now remember when I said in the beginning that I could crash the server with a flick of the finger? Well, that was no lie. That was possible thanks to two things. I mentioned earlier that Fox had kept a stash of various unobtainable enchanted books. One of those many books was an enchant known as Tunnel. At level 3, Tunnel allows the player to break blocks in a 3x3 area. We duplicated the book and applied it to all our tools, but I ended up finding a way to make it even stronger. One of the server's many features allowed the player to vein mine specific blocks. This was mostly limited to things like concrete, terracotta, sand, and gravel. However, there was a limit to this. Each use of the tool vein mine could only break 64 blocks before stopping, but this wasn't really the case for a tool with Tunnel. Tunnel doesn't work while the player is sneaking, and vein mine only works while the player is sneaking. But there was a command to change when vein mine was active. If you choose standing or always, then if you struck a block like terracotta with a tool of Tunnel, your initial hit would try to break 64 blocks, but you're trying to break another 8 blocks too. But those extra blocks that vein mine is breaking is also under the effect of Tunnel, so every single one is trying to break another 8 blocks too, and the effect snowballs massively from there. An unstoppable force with the limit of the amount of blocks there are. The server of course couldn't handle so many actions happening at once, so it dies. If that's a little confusing, let me put it into fewer words. With a single click, I had the ability to completely wipe entire biomes from the map. Well, as much as the server could handle, of course. Months later, a little bit into 2024, I found the third and final dupe exploit, and this one was even faster than the spawner on Vulpenia, the first dupe and the second dupe combined. This is how hard mode gave us one last gift. For the longest time, Soar has had a perimeter around the wilderness world over 3 million blocks away that is known as the hard mode territory. This place is accessed by doing the /hard command to teleport you there, and the goal is to obtain fame and power. Fame gives you a purple name in the chat, and power allows you to use /home to return to your island from the underground. But why is this info helpful? It's not. I was just giving you context on the whole thing. After acquiring fame and power, there's little incentive to ever return there. This is where Steve added a cool new feature. After announcing that there's some new additions to hard mode, I wandered around hoping to farm some tridents. I was trying to make use of one of the new additions, double mob loot, hoping it would give drowns a higher drop rate so they'd be easier to sell. However, I noticed something when one drowned dropped one. The drown actually dropped 2 tridents, and not only that, but both the tridents had the same durability. This sparked an idea in my head. When a drowned holds a trident, it just means that the trident takes up the inventory slot. What if this affects every mob's inventory? What about a fox, who can hold anything in their mouth? I returned to my island, grabbed one of my many fox spawn eggs, and gave it a try. Fox dropped 2 items instead of the one I gave it. This dupe was perfect. It's only done in hard mode, which is a fairly ignored part of the server. It requires either a fox, donkey, or anyone to clock on to a specific item drop in the same way I did with the trident, and it also requires at least 1 spawn egg to start properly, which at the time of discovery, spawn eggs were no longer obtainable due to the previous enchantment plugins breaking, making the thrifty enchant no longer work. Having a third dupe is great and all that, but the only things I really wanted anymore was more unique custom items to make use of. We found this dupe in April, so we just had to wait all the way until Christmas without anyone else finding the dupe to truly make use of it. In the meantime, we decided to build a new stash area, one that would be near impossible to track. This is where the island Farlands comes in. The island world is set to generate an island whenever an old one is purchased. This makes sure that there's enough islands for new players to have one to log into. Past this island line, there is nothing but void. However, there's a few small patches randomly around the world where the generation bugs out, and it creates this. The unique thing about this place is that unlike islands where you need an owner's permission to be able to break or place blocks there, the island Farlands belong to no one, and anyone could build there. Very few people knew about this, but many people knew about my islands, so to reduce the possibilities of detection, I flew out 100,000 blocks and built my stash there, only to be accessed by special portals that only I can activate. Everything was stored here, from unbreakable gear to arrows that one-shot players regardless of armor, all of it in insane quantities. Stealable by anyone, discoverable by none. We used the Farlands as a way to secretly test all of our new weapons and exploits, as no one can use a command to visit this place, since it's not an island. We did all this to pass the time until Christmas came around the corner, and thankfully, the dupe stayed for the entire time without anyone finding out. However, not all went according to plan. Just as most of the custom items for Christmas were designed, Steve announced that the server was going to shut down. This was due to various reasons, like him being too busy with real-life stuff, the server taking way too much of his time, and the cost of keeping it up was more expensive than the money it was making. I didn't make this video to make Steve look like a bad server owner or anything. He's probably the best and most passionate owner I've ever seen. He ran the server out of his own pocket and answered to everyone's concerns to make it the best possible experience. And I tried hard to convey through this video that I had no intention of disrupting that, for both the players and for Steve. If posting this video causes Steve to blacklist me from any future servers he makes, then I don't blame him. Soar was probably the most fun I've ever had in my life, and I met some great people along the way. The server always cured my boredom, and the community around it has always been amazing. The purpose of this video is to show how much fun this server was to me, but it might also act as my wanted poster for why you should never invite me to a server. Regardless, thank you for watching all the way to this point, and thank you Soar for being there.